What if the reason your best employees are leaving, it's not compensation, benefits, or competitive job market? What if it's something that's happening inside of your leadership team that no one is talking about? Every organization wants to hire the most exceptional people, but hiring great talent is only the first step. The real challenge is creating an environment where high performers can think clearly, grow in their careers, contribute to the highest level, and choose to stay. Today on Fitness Friday, we're going to explore the leadership decisions that shape hiring, culture, performance, and retention. And I am so excited to welcome Jenna Keesee to the show today. So let me tell you a little bit about Jenna. Jenna is a chief people officer. She's been an executive leadership strategist, founder of Sweet Lemons People Solutions. Throughout her career, she's helped high growth organizations scale by combining strategic talent acquisition, leadership development, and people first business practices. So she's not only just an HR person, she's very been involved in the business itself. She believes retention isn't an HR problem. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. It's the outcome of leadership decisions made every single day. Jenna is also passionate about helping organizations hire for long-term success by looking beyond the resumes and credentials. Very curious about that. She champions curiosity, critical thinking, business acumen, and learning agility as the qualities that predict future leaders, not just great employees. And we happen to bond over our shared love of karaoke. Jenna, welcome to Fitness Friday. I'm excited to dive into this conversation because I think leadership and people strategy have never been more connected than they are today. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love this. Thank you for the great introduction. And who knew that our love of four non-blondes would get us here today, being able to talk about things in business
I
that
know.
really matter.
When we were getting ready for this podcast, something that really stood out to me in that prep conversation was your philosophy of hiring for potential over pedigree. We often focus just on the experience because that feels like a very safe option. You look at a resume and they can demonstrate that experience. But you've said that curiosity, critical thinking, and business acumen are more or stronger predictors of long-term success. Can you tell the audience, what is it that you're looking for that tells you that someone is going to continue to grow long after they've been hired?
Yes. So all of that is true. And it's interesting as you unpack that a bit. I was recently gifted the book, Open to Work, How to Get Ahead in the Age of AI by the CEO and the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn. And they even touched on this a bit where they said that the reason why a lot of organizations focus on credentials versus potential, especially when seeking out to interview a candidate, is because that's something that can be measured. When an organization is looking at candidates and resumes, yes, you want to make sure there are some past experiences, whether that's industry specific or experiences that they have done, especially based off different levels in the organization. You may need someone who's turnkey and has a certain level of experience. But to your point, long-term success, having someone stay in the organization long-term, that's really that potential. And so curiosity and being able to ask open-ended questions around what motivates someone or what piques their interest and what sort of challenges they like to solve really help you determine their stickiness to an organization, because that's what every company wants, is for someone to stay long term and continue to build and grow with the company. So that's why I find that to be incredibly valuable. There's actually two things I thought about. It may be easier to identify potential based off of some of the things that they may put on resumes. I even think about my son, for example, who's only 15 and a half and he just got his first job. Things that I put on his resume were volunteer events that he did, or his grades, or the fact that during COVID, when he was only 10, he created his own lawn business to show that entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what a lot of organizations are looking for. What are those things that people do to tinker? What are their hobbies to really stay curious and want to stay long term?
Would you say that that kind of falls into that critical thinking, which is they're looking beyond just the job, that they've got interest and they're showing that they have that capability of thinking beyond just a job or a resume?
Yes. And I know you're going to get into it in some future topics, but thinking outside of the role that you're in. So traditionally, I know that you and I have been more recently within cybersecurity, or if you think about the technical industry as a whole. In the past, I think that our technical colleagues kind of got an unfair rap, if you will,
Mhm.
where the generalization was that technical people don't have strong business acumen or that they aren't great at communicating. And I found that not to be the case. And so
Yeah,
it
I
is
certainly
important.
experienced that early in my career. I'm a computer science major, so when I got out of school and I started writing code, but I had that curiosity for the business, and so getting out of that box of being labeled just technical.
Right, exactly. And that's the biggest thing. If you think about traditional engineers, they want to know the business problem. What is it that they're trying to solve for? And that's so important. That's how I've seen it show up. And the last thing I was going to end on with that is not every candidate is going to have every single box checked that's on the job description. So
Mhm.
that's another reason to hire for potential.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. If they have every single one of the skills, that sounds like a unicorn to me, which
Right,
is if they perfectly fit the job, you're going to have a very small candidate pool if that's what you're looking for.
right, exactly.
I really love the point that you made about business acumen and engineering talent, and that what you're looking for there is the connection between, can this engineer connect what they're doing in the job to what is the business problem that we're solving for? Are there any particular questions when you're interviewing for candidates or advising leaders on what are some of those questions that you could ask about curiosity or business acumen or critical thinking?
Yes. So I was thinking about a couple. We'll stick on the engineers. Even asking them a fairly obvious and simple question of what was the purpose of the last product or platform that you built? What did it do? And as you hear them walk through what it did, whether it was a payment platform or a risk mitigation platform or whatever that is, you can hear what they're describing. Another fairly simple question is really gets people thinking. And it's very simple, but when you're faced with a new challenge that you've never seen before, how do you approach it? What's your thought
Oh, yeah, I
process?
love that one. I love that one in particular just because they're thinking out loud and
Right,
they're telling you how they think, how they approach a problem.
right.
I love that one.
Yeah.
I love the first one because that's just a practical, simple, tell me what the last product was that you built or you launched or you released and what did it do? And having them describe that, the team may not all be technical. You're not looking for, tell me what coding, what language, what AI platform. You're asking them, what was the business problem that this product solved for? I love those two questions.
Correct. Yes. It's fun to hear too.
When we were doing our prep call, you were talking about the ideal team player framework. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why do you think that's so valuable in a hiring philosophy?
Yes, it's actually a book that I read last summer, and I just think that a couple themes stood out to me from the book. And so, for those of you who haven't read it, it's called "The Ideal Team Player" by Patrick Lencioni. It goes through a scenario where an organization hired a consulting company to come in and help them with their hiring and team development and understanding the culture of an organization. But the simple concepts were, is someone hungry? Is someone humble? And are they smart? And breaking it into those three categories and understanding how to have open ended questions and how that shows up and how they would work well together. It's about giving and receiving feedback. So, where the humility comes in,
Uh,
and what are their motivators? Where does their ambition stem from? And smart isn't necessarily in the traditional context of textbook intelligence. It's
mhm.
more around people smart. So, in working with teams, are they adaptable? Are they able to read the room and modulate their interaction based off of the audience that they're engaged with and working with? Because as you're aware and working with several different teams, we all have our quirks, we all have our nuances, and how can we get to a point of working well together? So, it's a
Yeah.
fascinating book.
I love those three concepts. A lot of times when you hire for talent, and I definitely saw this when I was in my sales roles, is we're looking for the people that are knocking it out of the park specifically. That's the skill. Is this person capable of selling it? And we hire exclusively for that. And then you find out, surprise, surprise, this person is not a team player. They don't work well with others. They don't know how to collaborate. And they certainly don't take feedback very well. So I love that those concepts, blending those across, because somebody that's a brilliant jerk can do so much harm to the rest of the team.
Yes, I love that example, especially since 8 years of my career was in sales.
Uh-huh.
And you have those teammates that
Yes.
are great as an individual, but they're not teaching or showing anyone else how to also increase their sales because it's viewed as competitive within the
Mhm.
team.
Yeah.
But we're a team. We want to beat our competition
Mhm.
externally. And there's a saying that I kind of just use from time to time. And I can't remember where I heard it, but it often stuck with me. And it's, there's plenty of sugar to go around. There's plenty of opportunity for all of us,
Mhm.
and knowledge sharing and helping others get ahead and learn the skills that you have. You'd be surprised
Yeah.
how much further that goes.
I think that goes along with a growth mindset. So when you're
Right.
thinking there's abundance and there's room for everybody, and that if we share our knowledge, the whole team collectively gets better and actually will make you better as a person and as a
Right.
seller because you're learning from other people. I also found that in engineering talent too, is that technical people can feel like the way that I get ahead is that I hold all that technical knowledge and I'm the best at what I do because I'm the smartest engineer, as opposed to I have an abundance mindset where everybody will learn what I learn and then we're going to just level up the organization because we're all growing together.
Right. Because then how does that work out whenever you go on vacation?
Yeah, that's true.
Then you're stuck
And then
and
you're
you're not
getting the phone calls while you're on vacation because you're the only person that knows how to fix whatever the problem was when something goes wrong. Yeah. One of the things that I noticed, and this is something that I do as part of my leadership programs, is when pressure is pushing leaders to make a decision on a hiring decision, and we're not taking that time to pause and really think clearly. Let's not think short term. We're looking for this person to fill a role, and we want them to be here for the long term. Are there any guidance or things that you do when you're coaching a leader to evaluate the best talent, not only today, but the one in the future? Is there anything that you say or phrase that you might get that person to stop and think?
whether or not they're a great fit to move
Yeah.
forward with.
Yeah. The leader's like, hey, I got to hurry up and make a decision. I saw 10 candidates. 3 of them look really awesome. Let's move forward to the next step, make an offer, see what happens. To me, that sounds very rushed, which is,
Right.
are you just trying to fill a slot or are you trying to find the best candidate?
Right. From my experience, it's a very, I would say, systematic, but open to flexibility. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to help answer any, let's say, outstanding questions, which is why I like a couple steps in interviews and a couple different people meeting with those individuals,
Mhm.
because then the next phase can build upon the one prior. And asking those scenario based questions, you can always do references. I know that some people like them, some people don't. The most recent organization I worked with, the CEO actually posed this question before we made an offer to anybody on the team, regardless if they were early career or had decades and decades of experience. But I found this one to really have someone stop and think. And the question is, do they make us better?
I love that.
And it's great. I know that time is of the essence. Everyone, ever since I started out in recruiting, I've always heard the term there's a war for talent. And even though
Mhm.
we hear that the industry is doing massive layoffs, we're still in a war for talent. People can't hire great talent fast enough. And that question is so simple, yet so telling, because it
Mhm.
helps, to your point, weed out the brilliant jerks. If you do hire someone like that, it can be pretty difficult on the culture.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
totally.
it's okay to pause and reflect. Do they make us better? And how do they
I
make us
love it.
better?
I love it. Like you said, it sounds like a very simple thing to ask, but if you stop and you pause, it's a very short sentence, but one of the things is us. Does it make us better? Not just my team,
Right.
the immediate task that's on the line. It's us as an organization, us as a company. Yeah. Okay. Well, so we've gone past hiring, we've hired the person. Now let's talk a little bit about retention, which is
Okay.
now that we've found this amazing talent and however long it took you to find the amazing talent. I love when we were having our conversation, you made a statement. You believe that leaders should assume every single employee that they've hired has an open to work button on LinkedIn. It's quietly turned on. It may not be visible to anybody, but it's quietly turned on. And when you said that, it was such a spot on assessment, which is don't worry so much about if your talent is looking for a job. Let's just assume everybody is. When you said that, again, a very simple, practical thing to say, but it also just changes your mindset. Can you just elaborate on that and tell us what you mean by that?
Yes. So whenever I was in external recruiting for about 10 years of my career, the organization I was with did a really good job of pumping us full of data and helping us understand. So this statistic might actually be a bit dated, but they found that 85% of the workforce that's happily employed is open to entertaining
Wow.
conversations.
So 85%, they'll take a call or somebody reaches out on LinkedIn and said, hey, you'd be amazing for this job. 85% of the time, people will say,
Yes.
yeah, I'll talk to you.
Yes. I mean, humans are very social creatures and we like to talk about ourselves. And who knows what that number is these days. I feel like there's so much uncertainty that
Mhm.
the professional workforce truly understands the importance of staying relevant and leveraging their professional network. So just because they took the call doesn't mean that they're going to leave the organization. But they
Right.
may have a friend who was recently displaced that they can refer, like to refer people that they know. They want to see their
Yeah.
networks and people
Yeah,
that they
that's a
care
great
about.
point too, which is maybe they're not actively looking, but they have people that are in their network that are looking, or maybe I'm not looking today, but sometime in the future because you and I connected, Jenna might remember me and call me again in say 2 years' time. Those are great points. What about the happy employees? I love my job. Why would a happy employee take that recruiter call?
I mean, I think for the same things that I mentioned, they are naturally curious about what's going on in the industry. And there's been a shift from, it sounds again cliche, but back in the day, there is no longer an employee employer contract. I mean, I think that there is a commitment. I think that our workforce does take that commitment seriously. I know in the past I've used the term, I love putting on a jersey. I love being a part of a team. So I look at it in a couple ways. About a decade of my career is on the external recruiting side. I also know that it takes about 6 touches for someone to be really interested in that opportunity. So maybe they took the call and that's your introduction. There are people that I worked with in my former organization where it took me 7 years to work with them. So
Mhm.
if you think about recruiting as a whole and relationship based recruiting, it goes beyond transactional.
I love the concept. If you're an external recruiter and you're looking at talent, it's your bench, going back to your bench, right?
Yes, there's a cadence around follow up, building that relationship, and you may not even have an opportunity for them, but asking them for referrals. It may sound immature of me to say, I mean, because this is what I did. Well, I mean, I guess I still do it, but I would sort of get myself excited. I would say, Jenna, well, it just takes one bad day for someone to want to leave their organization. They may be
Yeah.
happy today, but maybe not tomorrow, but that leads into everything
Yeah.
that you've been talking about culture.
Well, I think that's a really good segue into my next question for you, which is when somebody eventually resign, you get that resignation letter or they say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Is there a warning sign or a series of warning signs that leaders are just missing? They've got a blind spot to that they were early indicators that this person is checking out or not happy.
Yes and no. So I would say yes in the sense that whoever that person directly reports into, right? Depending on the cadence of their one on ones, the conversations that they're having, how transparent, how safe those conversations feel, there would have been indicators through those
Mhm.
conversations.
Yeah.
However, I have found that leaders tend to avoid one-on-one conversations because they don't know what to talk about. They think it's their responsibility to come up with an agenda when that's quite the contrary. They're scared to coach or develop, not because they can't, but because it does take courage to communicate through emotion and to be able to give someone some coaching that's never comfortable for either end
Mhm.
of the table.
I want to emphasize your first point, which is, and I agree with you this 100%. It's whoever is this person is reporting to. Is there trust there? When you schedule a one on one, do you actually have the one on one? Is it a meaningful conversation? Is there coaching, development? Are you transparent? All those things, building of that trust. And if that's not happening, then in my opinion, should be a surprise that somebody's checking out and going to leave the organization.
Right. The biggest one that you probably won't hear of often, and I think is the loudest indicator is when your best people go silent.
Totally. Yeah. I guess it's more difficult when you're in a hybrid work environment where you don't see people. Because if you were in the office, you would start picking up on some body language. But everybody's sitting on the little tiny screens all day long, I totally agree with you. Is that if this person used to be vocal and no longer is vocal, that should be like blinking red lights.
Yes, yes. And there's signs. Maybe they're not putting on their video. Maybe they're declining meetings. Maybe you still want to submit ideas to be talked about. There's signs for sure.
Yeah, yeah, totally. One of the things that we talked about is that retention is an HR problem. It's the outcome of leadership decisions. The way that you approach things is so practical, but this is not an HR problem. That people are
Right.
leaving, the talent is leaving is not a responsibility of HR. It's number one, it's the frontline manager, whoever that individual is working with, and then the leadership team that they report into. Can
Yes.
you tell us a little bit more about that philosophy?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is an everyone problem. I think the responsibility of HR is to communicate to leadership what they're hearing, especially since typically that function is the one that does the exit interviews and gathers the data and understands the patterns, if there are patterns as far as why people are leaving the organization.
Yeah,
So, HR,
controversial. I'm going to ask you this question. Are people actually truthful when they're doing the exit interviews? We couldn't compete with the compensation. The offer was just too good to pass up for this individual. Are we just kind of like blowing smoke when we say that?
times, so I used to do live exit interviews and then started doing more survey based exit interviews. I found
Okay.
that there's more openness in those. But even though I said HR does have a hand in communicating some of the patterns and themes, not just from exit interviews, but even the direct person that they reported to, depending on their relationship, they may have confided in them and told them the truth. HR to talk to them and say, hey, what could we have done? If you think about a loss review, if you will, when someone leaves an
Yes.
organization, that's a loss. So being able
Yeah.
to approach it to that standpoint, are there things that are in our control that we can fix? Are there not? But it truly is everyone's responsibility together as the team, having extreme ownership for an organization that we're trying to build together. Whatever we hear, if there are improvements that we can make together that would help keep the team together, it's all of our responsibility. It's just as I commonly say, it's all of our responsibility to recruit. It's everyone recruits, everyone sells, everyone retains the team. It's all of our
Mhm.
responsibility to really help overcome some of those challenges.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we've talked about the hiring of a person, retaining the person, and now I want to land on leadership in particular. So I spend a lot of time studying how pressure changes decision making, especially in leaders. And you spend time helping leaders create environments where people can succeed. When those two things comes together, pressure, ambiguity, uncertainty impacting the leaders, how does that change in how they're developing coaching? If the business pressure is just so great, I personally felt this myself, is coming from a really difficult strategy conversation, having a one on one with an employee. Is there uncertainty, ambiguity that's affecting leadership, and what can we do about it?
Yes, it causes chaos, confusion, and sometimes the inability to move forward because the work that you do, which is so important, which I think is incredibly helpful for organizations, the entire concept is seemingly in direct conflict with what the organization is trying to do. push out results better, faster, more, stronger. You think hard charging, high performing, I'm going to work however long I need to work if I'm responding to an incident around the clock, after hours. I've seen people in the past postpone their vacations or miss things that are life milestones that are really important. And while it's admirable that someone can feel so passionate around wanting to support a client, what I found is the biggest gift that a leader can do to their team is remind them that they don't need permission to take care of themselves, and slowing down to speed up. There is a lot of truth into that. I found that
Yeah.
there is a point of diminishing returns if you just keep grinding it out.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's the concept. Decision clarity, clarity under pressure is that there's only so much pressure that your brain or your body or just your cognitive capacity can take before there's a breaking point. And
Right.
we call that burnout, but there are a lot of signs that happen before I'm burned out, I can't do this anymore, and I'm checking out. But to your point, and I think leaders set the example for this, is that if you're a leader that's sending emails at midnight to your team, you're setting an example. You may not say it, but then they might start connecting the dots. Is that expected of me? Do I
Right.
have to do the same thing because my leader is doing that? Telling the leaders too, like, hey, you also need to take some time off too. Making sure that the leader is taking that time to decompress and do a pause. But I love that
Right.
whole concept that you said around the slowing down to speed up, because that's part of my framework, which is getting people to ground, take a breath, pause, get the cognitive function back online before you go and make the next decision.
Right. I mean, you see it all the time in sales. I have a friend who has her own real estate company, and every time she goes on vacation, her sales go up. She trusts her team to take care of it. And I think even in the industry that we both were in, going out, taking that time to pause and maybe take a vacation provides opportunities for other people on the team. Fresh perspective,
Yes.
maybe a fresh lens, fresh eyes that can come up with something else, and it really impacts the overall quality.
I agree. So you talked a little bit about chaos. So I know I experienced in roles that I've had in the past where priorities keep changing, and that feels very chaotic to me. So I've had situations where the CEO goes off on a weekend and comes back and says Monday morning, hey, I was thinking about this new strategy and I want to implement this new thing. Scrap the product that we were about to launch. But we're going to move down this path. And that's a change in business priority, plus it's a ripple effect across the entire organization. What's happening to the organization where priorities are constantly shifting?
It causes whiplash. It's hard. And plus it's really hard to communicate that out too. So confusion and chaos, like I mentioned before, if the go forward strategy changes on the drop of a dime, you may have a large subset of the organization that may think the old strategy is still the current strategy.
Oh, that's a good
And
point.
you'll have two separate things going on once. A really good example of this is, I think about organizations that create shadow IT groups. So because of my experience in technical recruiting, I found very large organizations, they have a technology team, but then in the business, they have these other little technology teams
Uh-huh.
that are spinning up their own projects. And so there could be two things happening in parallel that could be in direct conflict of each other. More money is spent, more resources are exhausted in it, and neither of the goals, the first one or the second one, or maybe even a new one beyond that, are being executed upon or achieved. And that really deflates morale when you have that, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the goalpost changes. And that's where
Mhm.
I can see, what we talked about as far as burnout and fatigue. If you keep changing that goal line and you're consistently running at a high velocity, high speed, it's burnout can come faster, and job satisfaction and feeling that you're contributing and that you're fulfilling purposeful work, you may not feel that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things on whiplash of priorities is I also think it hits with a fight, flight, freeze, fold. And if the priority keeps on changing, everybody's going to freeze. I would be thinking, well, let's just take a beat because it'll change back or it's going to be something else. So the team becomes paralyzed with not moving forward with anything because they're thinking another whiplash is about to happen. When you think about employees, what are employees expecting from their leaders today We both have been in the industry in tech for a long time. We've seen a lot of different companies, smaller companies, bigger companies, but in general, what are the expectations? What do I want out of my leader today?
I believe that they're looking for good communication and honest communication. I say honest over transparent because as a senior leader in an organization, there might be some business circumstances that you can't always tell everyone all about, but you can be honest and say, hey, here's what I can share
Right.
about what's going on, and here's how
Yeah.
you play a
Because
part.
sometimes we may not make payroll next week. I'm
Right,
not sure if I want to be that transparent to the
right.
employees.
Yes. But I think honest communication and open communication, and the biggest thing that I do believe that the workforce is looking for is responsiveness. That's my biggest pet peeve and also has led me to feel discouraged is as teams, right? On that jersey, we're working together. When someone reaches out to me, I'm so quick to respond. I'm quick to respond and say, hey, I'm busy. I'll come back to this and take a look at this.
Yes.
When do you need this by?
Yeah.
So, hey,
I
receive.
think that's good because my thing with responsiveness is that I quickly switch any of my priorities to whatever is your priority. But I think good communication with responsiveness is I can't get to you right now. Tell me when you need this and I'll put it on my list and I'll get to it as soon as I can.
So I'll rephrase that because I think as you're talking, I'm quick to acknowledge.
Yeah,
And I
okay.
think acknowledge
I
is
believe that
more
that's accurate because I think we get caught up in our head, which is I can build a story about why Jenna is not responding to my email. I could do that in 5
right,
seconds. Oh, Jenna doesn't like me. So I build this whole story about why Jenna is
right,
not responding to my email. And you find out, well, actually, Jenna was in a offsite all day and
right,
they were not allowed to touch their phones.
right. And I think acknowledge is so much more impactful than response because if I'm quick to respond and I send some, for lack of a better word, garbage
Yeah.
response, it's
It was
not
a quick,
helpful.
impulsive, reactive answer, and then it's actually not the right answer.
But acknowledging says, I see you,
Yes.
I
Oh, I
value
love
you as my colleague. What you need is important to me to help you. Let's understand how our priorities align and how we can work together on that.
I see you, I value you, is that whole thing is just so important.
Yeah, I see you. I value you as a colleague and understanding that the work that they do is important too. That's where I would get discouraged because if somebody didn't acknowledge me in the past, like you said, we make those stories up in our own head. A lot of the things that I would do were codependent upon other people.
Mhm.
And that it would hold me up from doing certain things. So they don't think that what I'm doing is important.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
And
that's the story. My first one is, "Oh, this person doesn't like me." I don't always need to be like, but that's the first thing that pops into my head, and then the second one is, "Well, they don't think what I'm doing is that important, and they don't have time for me."
right. Yeah. What I'm doing isn't that important to the organization. What they're doing is more important, and they don't value me as a colleague or partner. And then for me, I go down this rabbit hole of maybe they don't respect me.
It's
It's
that spiral,
wild.
right? Because once one thought comes in, then your brain starts to fill in the gap to
All the
support that
friends,
story. Yeah, it runs
all the
and it says, "That's it. So let me build out the rest of the story, so now I feel better about why this person's not responding to me."
right. Yes. And then they
So
pop in. They're like, wait, sorry. Like you said,
and you're like,
I didn't have on my
"Oh."
out of office.
Right, totally, exactly. So one of the things that I see in companies that I work with is we talk about burnout, and burnout means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's not just the workload itself. Could be, as you said, it could be chaos is happening, priorities keep on changing, communication isn't great. If I'm a leader, I can get burned out because I'm constantly context switching between all the different types of meetings that are on my calendar. And then just in general, decision overload. Have you seen that? Thinking about what I do for organizations, have you seen that as a consistent theme? Is burnout is, if you unpack it, there's a lot of different things that are underneath that.
Yeah, I can see that. I just think at the simplest terms, when I have decision making fatigue from a day of work, even the simplest decision I need to make will send me over the edge. It could be, hey, what's for dinner? I'm like,
That, oh my gosh, is my thing, which is at the end of the week, your kids are like, "Mom, mom, mom."
Any decision. And so, what I found helps, especially in working with a team, is to turn it around. Well, what do you think? How would you approach this? Try to help generate different ideas. 'Cause yeah, it can be a
And
lot.
I think that's really important and be genuine about it. I value you. I value your input. I, as a leader, don't have to have all the answers. I can
Correct.
get perspective from other people.
Correct.
And I think
You get better ideas.
doing meaningful work. So I feel valued, my input is respected, and the work that I do has meaning and purpose. And I have purpose at this company.
Absolutely.
Okay, high performance is a big buzzword, and I've heard it for a very long time. We want from the recruiting to the talent development is we're looking for high performers. Once we get them in, we want to develop our high performers. But can you talk a little bit about sustainable high performance? What separates an organization that sustains excellence year after year? So, not only just high performers, but being a high performing company.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to some of the concepts that we were talking about before in the concepts that you talk about whenever you think about clarity. Clarity is huge. What does excellence look like? How does that show up? How is that demonstrated throughout in the organization? And
And do you actually do that where you sit down with the organization, like in a role of a chief people officer? Do you ask the CEO and the leaders, how do we measure excellence or what does excellence look like in our organization?
yeah, and I think that shows up in a couple different ways. So if you think about internally and externally facing, right, from a sales and marketing standpoint, organizations obviously do client surveys, and it can show up in client testimonials and sharing that internally with the team so that they can understand the impact of their work
Mhm.
at large versus just anecdotally thinking, well, we're great. But with that
So you're
comes
looking for
listening.
measurable key performance indicators
Yes.
that show these are the things that we're going to measure, and then we're going to look at those things over time. Do you share those metrics? Is your advice have good communication and let the team know that this is what we're measuring our high performance by?
Yes, I think so. I think if you don't share how that's being measured, then it's very arbitrary and can be left to interpretation. But I think it's good to not only share the measurement or share what the clients are saying, and also internally, if you think about team members and trying to grow their career, there's all sorts of different KPIs and things that you can look at as far as promotional opportunities, attrition, retention.
Sales is easy. Customer support is easier because you've got tickets and then you can get the customer survey feedback, marketing, how many MQLs, SQLs, all. But what about, let's say, an engineering organization, not client facing, but should all parts of the organization have some sort of key performance indicator that says this is excellence in our function?
Yes. But I
Good.
think
Yeah.
just as a business overall, too. I think for engineering, you can probably think about, especially now moving towards AI enablement, everything is how can we build and deploy faster? So, can they take something that used to take maybe a year and a half and build, ship, and deploy within 76 days? That could be, but then is that a good measurement? Truly understand what the good measurement is, because that could be
Mhm.
buggy or the quality. So, focusing on quality and then sharing that internally and also considering if there's any sort of constructive feedback that's coming back and what the team is doing to really make improvements upon that so that they could iteratively improve. Because it's great to keep hearing, oh, we're the best, we're great. But even though it may sting, it's good to hear, hey, we can improve upon this.
Mhm.
Wow.
I mean, that should always be the case, right? Companies that just sit in whatever they're good at today have to be constantly thinking about how do we push this to make us even better and even better? Because the ones that stay stagnant or coast on what is in place today, they're going to have a tough time in the future because they'll be behind the curve if you're not
Right.
continuously looking at the next thing.
And there was one question I used to ask when I was in sales too, because once you start to build relationships in an organization, and you know that they're coming to you to deliver what they need, you tend to stop asking questions. And you certainly don't ask this question, but it's a really good one to ask is why do you like working with us? What are those things that you like that we do? And how can we further
Oh, yeah.
improve
Yeah.
upon that? Because if you think someone likes you and they're coming to you for a service, They're like, "Okay, great. This is going well. I mean, they obviously like me, but why? Why do you like me?"
Yeah, that's a really, really insightful question to ask a customer. Why do you buy from us? Why
Correct.
do you like the products? And when you ask that question, you may find out it's actually not the product, it's the people or some other factor.
Right.
So what's your advice for leaders that fine tension between holding people accountable but not micromanaging your team? What's your advice for a leader that's trying to walk that fine line?
I think it's the age-old thing of, trust but verify. People wanna be trusted with projects and deliverables and being a safety net to be able to bounce ideas off of. The one thing that drives me wild is whenever someone says, "Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions." Well, I may not have a solution to a problem that I
Mhm.
have, and I could really leverage your help, and it's not because I haven't thought about it, but
Yeah.
can we brainstorm on this together,
We
please?
you're absolutely 100% right. I know I've said this to people that have worked on my team. Don't bring me all your problems. I want some solutions. And I don't know if they interpreted that as don't ever come to me with just a problem and not a solution because you've identified something that isn't working.
Right,
Not all problems have an immediate solution.
right.
I know a lot of people are looking for flexibility. There's flexibility, but also boundaries. So a leader has got to manage boundaries. I do need you to be here because we've got products that we're launching but I also want to give people flexibility. So you have any advice there for leaders that are managing flexibility and setting boundaries?
Yeah, I just think it boils down to the main theme that we talked about a lot is communication and communicating. A lot of us have outside of work commitments. And while we may really enjoy our work, whether people have families or not, I am a big proponent and advocate for earlier career professionals that also don't have families, because I know historically flexibility has only been provided to those that do. But I think it boils down to communication. Sometimes you can't get to doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, or whatever commitments outside of business hours. So, time
Hmm.
blocking your schedule and communicating to your team members, and also trying to adjust some of that if there's a deadline that you have. And those schedules shift and change. For those of us that are working parents over the summer, it looks a lot different than it
Right.
does in the school year. So, I am a big proponent of people being able to block their calendars so that they're not scheduled at that time and communicate to their team. It's those
Hmm.
2 things are just incredibly huge. Usually when
Yeah.
communication doesn't happen, that's where the trust is lost. And like you
Yes.
said, going down the assumption train of, "Okay, well, I scheduled this, they didn't accept. Well, maybe they're at the doctor."
Yeah. Yeah. I think as a leader, when we both worked in cyber, there were a lot of late nights and weekend hours with cyber. The bad guys don't sleep.
Mhm.
So I would tell people you work this whole weekend, take Monday, Tuesday off. We've got it remediated. I want you to take some time off and you're not booking that as vacation. Just go. Go do what you need to do.
Right, 100%. And so I like that you said that too, because when I'm talking about blocking schedules or communicating with the team, I know I've talked to you about the exercise that I like to do. There's a local Bar3 studio that I go to, and I love the 7:15 a.m. class. I also like the 8:30 a.m. class because 7:15 isn't always available. And I'll go to those classes because I found that I'm a better performer
Yeah.
and better colleague when I've had that either 45 minutes to an hour to lean into what my body and mind needs, which is to have that movement and have that reset for the day. So, yes, going to the gym, doing different things like that, it really helps you be better overall and help with your decision making.
Hmm. I
And I
think
don't,
your
yeah,
point, I think it comes down to communication, which is if I have a good trusting relationship with my leader as an employee, I can say to the leader, hey, I might be going to the 8:30 class because that's what I need to do to perform my best in my job.
right,
So can we have a call a little bit later because I'm going to be at the 8:30 class. So I show up ready. 100% of my brain power is available to do the work today.
right. And that's the thing I love about cyber too, because no one in cyber really loves an 8 a.m. meeting anyway.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Because you probably were up late
Correct.
dealing with the
Yes.
client issue. So, you have a great saying and you have so many words of wisdom. And one of the things that we talked about was failure is a gift. It's called experience. Tell me more about that philosophy. This is one I want people to remember.
Yes. So I remember exactly where I was, exactly when I heard this. It was right before I went into cyber. It was November 2016. I was in Dallas, Texas at a Women in Leadership conference, and there was a few breakout speakers. And being in a sales capacity, I loved it. It's great. I still love it. Sales is a part of everything that we all do. But for me at that time in my life stage, having two very small children at that time, and I heard this woman get up and speak. And for me, that flipped my mindset because I was wanting to demonstrate this facade of perfectionism. And I
Yeah,
found that growing in your career and growing as a leader, it's okay to make mistakes if you own them. It's worse to make a mistake and double down on it and be like, no, that was the right decision. Let's be real. We're all human. And for me, when I heard her say that, when I heard her say failure is a gift and it's called experience, I just stopped in my tracks and I said, I will never forget that. Because if I look back at any of the quote unquote failures I've had in my life, I've had the gift of experience. I learn a different path that would
right.
be more beneficial. It's funny that way. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. When I talk to people is if you never made a mistake, then how do you know that you're learning and growing and
Right.
developing? Because that's the purpose of trying something. It's okay to try something and then you can iterate on that. Well, that didn't actually work out as what I expected, but now I'm going to iterate on that. And I think sometimes we get so much into our heads, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of making a mistake, feeling fear of how other people will perceive us if we make a mistake, that we don't try. And I love that whole philosophy. Failure is a gift. It's called experience. Are there any things around culture that you want to tell us about? So, how does a leader create a great culture? You and I both know that culture really comes from the leader. Whoever is the person that you're working for, that is the true culture. You can have something that's on a board or painted on your wall, but those interactions with the frontline leaders where culture really gets built. How do you create cultures where people feel valued, they feel safe, they can keep learning, have meaningful work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were just talking about as far as having the flexibility to make mistakes, understanding that no mistake is so catastrophic that it can't be fixed. But again, you need to communicate in advance. I think I did something wrong. Like, what would you have done
Oh,
differently?
100%. I would agree with that, which is own your mistake and then tell your leader that, hey, I think I
Right,
screwed something up so that
right.
the leader is not blindsided.
Right. I would rather tell on myself
Yeah.
and people that are self reflective and take that accountability and ownership because mistakes are going to happen and might as well learn from them versus trying to brush them under the rug and pretend that it didn't happen because that could cause an even larger mistake. But I think the way that people see that demonstrated in culture is to really act upon it, see how the company responds when that happens. And that is a big telltale sign on, okay, I
Oh,
feel
yeah, I
safe to be
agree.
able to be my whole self here and share in that. You don't
So
want
if
people walking on eggshells.
if I communicate that I made a mistake, how is that received on the other end? Do I feel safe in communicating that? I'm focused so much on being safe and not making a mistake that I don't push forward with really breakthrough innovations.
Right. Yes.
No conversation about the future of work is complete without talking about AI. So let's talk about leadership in the world of or the age of AI. Leadership is evolving faster and faster. Now we've got AI. It's changing how we hire, communicate, work together. What do you think are going to be the leadership qualities and the qualities you hire for that are going to become even more valuable over the next 5 years? Now, 5 years, that sounds like a really long time frame.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, I think it's even happening now based off of how AI is just transformed so quickly. And the book that I referenced at the beginning, I'm really happy that I read it last week when I was on vacation because it talks about this and it talks about having an entrepreneurial spirit. In the past, I think organizations typically operated more in a siloed fashion, so a lot more cross collaboration, people kind of swerving out of their lane should be welcome and encouraged. And the biggest thing that I read that really resonated with me It was the entrepreneurial spirit because now a lot of the barriers to entry are lower. And that's what causes people to collaborate more because people can build things now. So Jenna in HR can build an HR dashboard, whereas in the past I had to be codependent on someone in technology. So
Mhm.
really tapping into these new capabilities that the team is creating. And so the gist of it is we don't have an AI problem. AI is, and because I've been interviewing and talking to a lot of different companies, a lot of companies that I talk to all seem to have the same problem right now. Everyone's moving towards AI. And how can we track and determine where someone is on the AI competency level? So
Mm.
0 to 5, 0, someone knows how to spell AI because it's in the word, or 5, they're automating. Maybe they have a robot that's doing the dishes. I don't know. But how do you measure that? And as I started thinking about this, I feel like we're measuring the wrong thing. AI is relatively easy to use. It's not an AI issue, it's a human issue. And it's
Mhm.
focusing on the communication, focusing on that intersection of collaboration, knowledge sharing, not having the brilliant jerk that's going to be uber successful in their own right. It really will be a team effort of working together to venture into this new domain. And it's incredibly fascinating, the
Mhm.
challenges that we have. People were concerned that it was taking away from human connectedness. And I think quite the opposite. It's building more connection because we're all afraid that it's a bot that's reaching out to us. So you're
Yeah.
validating, you really want to have that personal touch. I think it's really exciting.
I think it comes full circle when we talked about hiring earlier in our conversation, which is the same things that you were hiring for are going to be the same things that you're hiring for in the age of AI.
Yeah.
Critical thinking, business acumen, and curiosity. And do you have a thirst for learning? It's just a
Yes.
new tool. And I've been in the industry for a long time, so I've ridden multiple technology waves. I started my career in IT. I went to distributed computing, then it was cloud computing, and now AI is just a tool which is meant to solve business problems. So you're still hiring for and looking for people that can solve business problems. Now you just have a new fancy tool to do it with.
Well, you're spot on because there's actually a reference in there about how there was an individual who saw an ad that said, learn COBOL, punch your own ticket. So
Oh
this is even
gosh.
going further back.
Yeah.
And,
Like I'm
and
I'm that old. I was on the bridge waiting for Y2K to happen and nothing happened.
yeah, I actually use that example when during Y2K, I think I was all of 19 years old and all of a sudden I thought I was like some sort of investment banker and I knew that everything was going to crash and nothing happened, right? So everyone
Right.
had this hype about
Yeah.
AI, but you see a lot of organizations doing layoffs and all sorts of things, but then they're hiring all of these anthropic engineers. Where are all these people coming from? So, to your point, it's the potential, it's the capabilities. There's not really credentialing just yet because there are
Right.
jobs where there may not be degrees for yet.
Yes. To your point, hiring for potential is going to become even more important in the age of you're
Right,
looking for how does this person think? Can they
right.
demonstrate that they have intellectual curiosity to learn, grow, and develop? So that potential is there.
Yes.
If there was one thing that you want a leader to take away from our conversation and tomorrow they could change one thing to help people perform at a higher level, what would that be?
Well, obviously, call Lisa.
Yeah. Shameless plug, right?
No, I mean, you really were the first person I reached out to because I was in such a state of despair after I lost my job. And I would say call you. I know that wasn't what you were asking me, but
I
really
think I think
reflect.
the point, and I'll try to summarize, is that when you're overwhelmed and you've got so much in your head, you need to have that pause, that reset, that moment of I'm going to be okay. I will figure this out. I have figured it out in the past. I will figure it out in the future. Give me this chance to pause before I start reacting.
Right.
And that's really all I did. You are an amazing person. You're going to be just fine. You need to take the pause and reset.
Yes. And I think a lot of what we talked about. So, if I were giving any leader listening to this advice, not only over our love of karaoke and genres of music, I know I've mentioned a couple books throughout this podcast, but Brene Brown and some of her
Oh,
books.
yeah.
And I would encourage leaders to think of vulnerability as a strength. I can't remember the exact quote, but back in the day in the Naval Academy, they used to say strong back, soft front, open heart.
Hmm.
And that is the strength in leadership. I mentioned earlier, I used to be a perfectionist. I used to be so wound tight. I wanted things to look perfect. And I think a lot of times leaders still subscribe to that. And right now, as we've unpacked throughout this entire conversation, we're all in the same conundrum together. We don't know what we're doing because we don't know how to measure what success looks like within AI.
Yeah.
Companies are laying off, companies are hiring. We're saying entry level talent is going away, but it's not going away. It's a wild landscape that we're going through, but unpacking it, walking step by step with your team, being open with honest communication, not having all the answers to everything, also being curious, asking the team questions is going to take them a very far way. Because again, we talked about acknowledge. You're seen, you're heard, you have
Hmm.
value to add this to this organization. You make us better. And we want to continue doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why we connect so well is that I was also that person. I was the perfectionist. I had a plan for everything. That was my process. And as I've gone through this journey of building out decision clarity, awakening performance, all of tools, it's really because I was diagnosing myself, telling people that I was in their place. I know what it feels like because I was that leader and vulnerability, especially in the age of AI. It's impossible for the leader to see where AI going in the future. And it is very chaotic. Hiring, laying people off, new talent, mid-stage talent, where do you find the talent? All of these things are all swirling in our heads. I think it's important for the leader to acknowledge that I don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure it out together. I think that's a really important message.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your new adventure. I'm so excited about
Yay.
this. Sweet Lemon People Solutions. Tell me more about what you hope to accomplish in this consulting company.
Yes, I'm really excited. The day before I went out of town, I opened up my own LLC and then went to go visit the in laws for a week. So today, being back,
Every single day you're saying, "What about this? Here's an idea. This is what I was thinking about."
well, listen, the best ideas come when you're laying out by the pool with your mother in law. I mean, really, that was so great. Talk about a life well lived. That's where I get my best ideas, is whenever I'm leaning into life. And so, yep, before I left, created my own LLC. And today you'll be proud of me. I started working on the website. I need to make sure I connect my domain and all sorts of stuff. So I'll probably be reaching out to some of my more technically savvy friends, but I will have a website. It's going to be sweetlemonpeoplesolutions.com. I will have an email. Actually, I do have the email. It's Jenna at sweetlemonpeoplesolutions.com.
Awesome.
So I do have a logo too. So I'm really pumped for all of that. But thank you for having me on here to just really circulate it. My job ended on June 23rd and I just jumped into action. I have a job tracker. I've been interviewing for full-time positions, and throughout that, some of the opportunities I've interviewed for wanted to consider potentially hiring me in the consulting capacity. And that really sprung this idea. And as you know, and others know who know me, my mother and I were super close. And she always said, I turn my lemons into lemonade. So it's an homage to her. And sometimes things happen and they may feel bitter, but they always turn out sweet. And so I want to give people hope and be a strong resource for
Mhm.
them and organizations. They'll be primarily staff augmentation, so direct placement, or if they need help with values, culture, any sort of transformation, competency framework building, whatever it looks like. And from a people perspective that can tap into my experience, I'm happy to work through that with organizations. So I'm really excited. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenna. This has been an amazing conversation. Jenna, you're awesome. You can also find Jenna on LinkedIn. And thank you for joining us on Fitness Fridays.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you.